Whoa, okay. I think everything is in place. Hello everyone. Morning, evening, and afternoon for all of you. How's it? How's days? I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend because, well, for some of us, well, I dare like to say most of us, it's gonna be end of our weekend for a very time soon. And for that reason, I need to finish my homework. Hello everyone. Zapelli, Mr. August, Cosmos, Aqua, Candy Can, Bake. How's everyone doing? Feels like a not so long ago when we last met, and I realized that we literally just streamed yesterday. So, good to know that. How am I? I'm doing alright, I presume, because I have to... This is not the only book I'm going to be reading today after the stream. Where is it? I don't think I have the time to read through the Vampire and then read through the first 50 pages of Graveyard. So I will only be reading through the Vampire today. Hopefully that doesn't spread around 4 hours straight. So, well, God bless us. Hello there, Mr. August. Hope you guys have your beverage of choice and... Oh, sit down and have a good posture. And make sure to stretch because we're gonna be here in the same place for a while. Resisting the urge to say let him book. Well, now is the right time to say that actually, Isabelli. So, take your chance. This is exactly the time. Okay. Let me take one more sip. Okay. Now, the particular book I'm going to be reading today is... Well, sorry. Let me actually change that to this. The Vampire. It is by... I don't remember the last name of this guy, but it's by a author goes by the name of John Polidori. Oh, I remember it. Hey, look at that. And it is relatively an older piece compared to the, let's say, Coraline or the Graveyard book, which are relatively more modern and even have film adaptations. So this one's gonna be in a very, well, not prehistoric, but pre-modern English. So if there's any questions, any problems, wait, I'm not taking a class here, what the hell? But yeah, if there's anything you wanted to know or anything I'm confused about and you know about the answer, please let me know in the chat. Because although I am somewhat aware of the Old English, well, fully aware of the Old English format, I'm not exactly that well versed in all the vocabulary since it's been a while since the last time I actually read or write anything with this. So I hope you guys enjoy this, and you guys asked for it. And hello there, Pakiasha. How's your day? There's not going to be particularly any. Sorry. There's no need to force interactions. I just hope that you, all of you, had your own work ready or have everything in the back while I'm reading this, so that I hope you is able to relax for a bit and enjoy the time for the end of the weekend. So, hello there, Asami. Oh yeah, what was the thing you want to talk about before we begin? You said that you have some good news. I want to spread the vibe. What is it? Kinda want to know now. Saw the pre-chat there. And I hope the background jazz music isn't really that intrusive for all of you. You got first place in your sport. Oh, congratulations! Oh my god. Asami is an actual person who touched grass. Compared to me. Congratulations. I mean, technically I touch grass, but my grass are all books. And Sin just burned 42 of my books. So I'll remember that. I'll definitely remember that. Alright, so before we begin, there's introduction. So the Vampire book has 26 pages of introductions and prologue. But I'm not going to read through that because most of them are citations and letters from different Geneva what was it? Categories. So most of them are not exactly that crucial to the information, even though, well, it is good to read through them, but I'm not gonna read through it today. The moral story is the main story here, but I want to read through the synapses on the online, just so that you have a basic understanding of it itself. Oh there, Viola. You guys are way too enthusiastic for me reading stuff. Oh there. Oh, observe. Oh, Theo. The I'm thinking about playing it in the back, but I realize that it's not gonna be good for both me and you, so I'm not gonna play that in the back. Hello, Theo. The cover was great. Very fit your character, that's for sure. Yeah. But anyway, right. The Vampyre is a short work of prose fiction written in 1819 by John William Polidori, taken from the story Lord Byron told as a part of the contest among Polidori, Mary Shelley, Lord Byron, and Percy Shelley. The same context produced the novel Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus. So, most of you will be familiar with the piece, Frankenstein, but I don't think some of you will not know about this one. But, well, as the name suggests, it's about vampire, so I don't think there's not much to to go through with the synopsis. You're embarrassed though? Oh, come on. That was great, what are you talking about? Hello there, Four Elements. Oh, Ario, it's been a long time since I see you. Viola too, I see a lot of old faces around here. Welcome back! How's everyone's day? I have not started reading yet. Oh my guys, it's ice. What is with you guys fixated on me reading stories? It's not that, like, content filled at all. Like, okay, right. You're sensing comfort. Yes, there is comfort. Your hand hurts from doing homework. Well, I'm about to start doing mine, but mine's about vocal cords. So I hope that's that's not gonna be bad after today. But right. So where was I? Oh yeah, the vampire is often viewed as the. Oh boy, I forgot about how to pronounce this. I know about the meaning of this, but I don't remember how to pronounce this. Oh boy. Oof. Give me a second. Progenitor. Oh yeah, progenitor. Fucking hell. Yeah, the person. Yeah, I get that. Jesus fucking Christ. It's been a while since I read all the. Oh, this. Progenitor of the romantic vampire genre of fantasy fiction. So let me read that sentence again. The vampire is often viewed as the progenitor of the romantic vampire genre of fantasy fiction. The work is described by Christopher Frayling as the first story successfully to fuse the desperate elements of vampirism into the coherent literary genre. So we're off to a good start here. Progenitor, Ice, progenitor. As in a projector, essentially. Next, read something wild and unhinged, like Amazon Reviews. That's an entire different breed here. The reason why we have this on scheduled streams because I need to read this for my class, my college classes. So that's why we have this. But that can be something that we do later on down the line. So thank you for that recommendation. I think you made a spelling mistake. No, this particular piece is actually spelled with vampire with an Y. It's not a typo. And it is a decently well-known piece from the 19th centuries. So if you were to go into literature classes, you would definitely get this in one of the earlier few classes, including me. So yeah, some languages spell vampire as vampire. Yeah. So I do believe that this is a British literature. Yes, it is. So yep, there's a London literature, and this to give you a small backstory too, this particular piece written by John Polidori is actually semi-stolen by John from his Lord Byron, because the entire base concept of the entire novel was pitched by Lord Byron, but the story itself was written by John Polidori. So there was a bit of contradictions and other controversy around here, but still, yeah, a bit with the literature side of things. Amazon Reviews will one day be considered peak literature. Yes. In the 19th century, we have a vampire. In the 20th century, so we have the what was it? The oh god, I remember the modern Renaissance days, and now we have this. You have this book on your bookshelf? Hell yeah! I actually have a book too. Exact book, but I'm reading the ebook here since the one I have is so broken that if I open it, it might just fall into pieces. I'm not gonna read that. So is there something wrong with vampire? Why would they change it to I instead of Y? It's the same thing goes to like the word fire and pyro. Like it's Latin when it was first came out, but it's just the revolution of the English language itself. I'm not gonna try to go into too much history because I don't remember much either. But yes, sometimes the way of spelling just changes a lot. But well, who to blame other than the ones who make arbitrary rules for English language, right? So, all right. Without going too much into details, how about we start now, huh? The vampire fault Twilight exists. What? Oh, it's the vampire fault Twilight exists. I feel like it's kind of a it's kind of a inspiration of the entire genre, but of course it's more on the fantasy side more than the romantic side. So who knows? Because this particular one's actually categorized as short horror film. About not film, short horror story. So yeah, we don't know what's gonna happen. Nious don't pay attention in class. Bad Nious. Hey, I'll have you know that I pay attention to most of the classes, but I forget about it because I don't do notes. All right. I'm very bad at writing things. With my handwriting, because my handwriting sucks. For those who order for my birthday merch, you'll know how bad my handwriting is. So, there you go. Right, let's begin, shall we? Before we get into too much of a beginning. Do we have actions romantic? I have not read through the entire story yet. I've read it like a long time ago. But I don't remember much of the plots. If there's too much, well, provocative, then I'm gonna think about it. I want to go through it with it, alright? But it's relatively written in a older version of English. Well, it's in 19th century, so just from the first sentence it says, "It happened that in the midst of dissipation attendant upon a London winter, there appeared at a various party of the leader of the ton a nobleman, more remarkable for his singularities than his rank." Now that's so much more like sophisticated and so much more older English than it is modern English. So if you don't understand it, I totally get that, because I still need to take some time to read this too. Here at a various party, yeah. So it's just essentially saying that there's a dissipation attendant, a lord of some sort, as a nobleman, who is good at his own, well, ability to group people together, I guess. Well, all right. I don't want to go into too much details here, so I'm gonna just read through it, alright? If you have any questions, or if I have any questions and you have any answers for, do let me know. So, let's do this. It happened that in the midst of dissipations, attendant upon a London winter, there appeared at a various parties of the leaders of that ton a nobleman, more remarkable for his singularities than his rank. He gazed upon the mirth around him, as if he could not participate therein. Apparently, the light laughter of the fair only attracted his attention, that he might by a look quell it, and throw fear into the breast where thoughtlessness reigned. You read out loud? Yes, I'm doing that right now. So, alright. Apparently, the light... Oh, wait, sorry. Those who felt the sensation of awe could not explain whence it arose. Some attributed to the dead grey eyes, which, fixing upon the object's face, did not seem to penetrate, and at one glance to pierce through, and an inward working of the heart, but fell upon the cheek with a leaden ray that weighed upon the skin it could not pass. His peculiarity caused him to be invited to every house. All wished to see him, and those who had been accustomed to violent excitement and now felt the weight of ennui, were pleased at having something in their presence capable of engaging their attention. In spite of the deadly hue of his face, which never gained a warmer tint, either from the blush of modesty, or from the strong emotions of passion, though its form and outline were beautiful. Many of the female hunters after notoriety attempted to win his attention, and gain, at least, some marks of what they might turn affection. Lady Mercer would have been the mockery of every monster shoon in drawing rooms since her marriage, threw herself in his way, but did all but put on the dress of a mountebank to attract his notice, though in vain when she stood before him, though his eyes were apparently fixed upon hers. Still it seems as if they were unperceived. Even her unappalled impudence was baffled, and she left the field. But though the common adulteress could not influence even the guidance of his eyes, it was not that the female sex was indifferent to him. Yet such... Wait, hold on a second, what? Sorry. Yet such was the apparent caution with which he spoke to the virtuous wife and innocent daughter, that few knew he ever addressed himself to females. He had, however, reputation of a winning tongue, and whether it was that even overcame the dread of his singular character, or that they were moved by his apparent hatred of vice, he was as often among those females who formed the boast of their sex from their domestic virtues, as among those who sully it by their vices. So, he's a ladies' guy, essentially. Got it. About the same time, there came to London a young gentleman of the name of Aubrey. He was an orphan left with an only sister in possession of the great wealth, by parents who died while he was yet in childhood. Left also to himself by guardians, who thought it their duty merely to take care of his fortune, while they relinquish the more important charge of his mind to care of mercenary subalterns. He cultivated more his imaginations than his judgment. He had, hence, that high romantic feeling of honor and candor, which daily ruins so many millennials. Sorry, Jesus Christ, it's been a long time since I pronounced these kind of words. It's been a long time. Lo shall subscribe to Nious because he had me did it well. Yes, you should, and we shall continue. He believed all to sympathize with virtue, and thought that vice was thrown into providence merely for the picturesque effect of the scene, as we see in romances. He thought the misery of a cottage merely consisted in the vesting of clothes, which were as warm, but which were better adapted to the painter's eyes by their irregular folds and various colored patches. He thought, in fine, that the dreams of the poets were the reality of life. He was handsome, frank, and rich. For these reasons, upon his entering into the gay circles, many mothers surrounded him, striving which should describe with the least truth the languishing and romping favorites. Now let me clarify that to you. That particular sentence that says, for these reasons, upon his entering into the gay circles, the word gay here, well, back in the days, are described and defined as happy. But because of modern definitions, it's turned into the expression of no homosexualism. So I hope that's clarified here, in case you don't know. The daughters at the same time, by their brightening countenance when he approached, and by their sparkling eyes when he opened his lips, soon led him into false notions of his talents and his merit. I'm not gay, take that as what you please. Yes, indeed. Attached as he was the romance of his solitary hours, he was startled at finding that, except in his tallow and wax candles that flickered, not from the presence of a ghost, but from what was snuffing, there was no foundation in real life for many of the congeries of the pleasing pictures and the description contained in those volumes, from which he had formed in his study. Finding, however, some compensation in his gratified vanity, he was about to relinquish his dreams, when his extraordinary being we have above described crossed him in his career. Happy you say? Yes, indeed. But in that context, I am not gay. Yeah. He watched him, and the very impossibility of forming an idea of the character of a man entirely absorbed in himself, who gave few signs of his observation external objects, and that tacit assent to his existence, implied by the avoidance of their contact, allowing his imagination to picture everything that flatter his propensity and extravagant ideas. He soon formed this object into the hero of a romance, and determined to observe the offspring of his fancy rather than the person before him. He became acquainted with him, paid him attentions, and so far advanced upon his notice that his presence was always recognized. He gradually learned that Lord Ruthven's affair was embarrassed, and soon found on the notes of the preparation inn streets that he was about to travel. Desirous of gaining some information respecting the singular character, who, till now, had only whetted his curiosity, he hinted to his guardians that it was time for him to perform the tour. Sorry. Which for many generations had been thought necessary to enable the young to take some rapid steps in a career of vice towards putting themselves upon the equality with the aged, not allowing them to appear as if fallen from the skies. Whenever scandalous intrigues are mentioned as subjects of pleasantry or of praise, according to the degree of skill shewn in carrying them on, they consented that Aubrey immediately mentioned his intention to Lord Ruthven, and was surprised to receive from him a proposal to join him. That was fast. Flattered by such a mark of esteem from him, who apparently had nothing in common with other men, he gladly accepted it, and in a few days they had passed the circling waters. Wow, that was a interesting beginning. And might the author use the big and complicated words in the old books? Because in how the heck do you find the words, plus expect the readers to understand that word? The Saurus or cute, but here's the thing about this is that the authors who use these big and old books are most likely the ones who are not either in much education or in too much education. So, and plus, some of these words, especially, let me see. Some of these words, like, for example, what else is there? Rapid, no. Curiosity, embarrassed, gaining information. Pleasantry. We only say the word pleasant in the near times, but we don't say anything outside of pleasantry. Well, pleasant. We just say pleasant. We don't say pleasantry. And I do believe that is a thin lining down. What was it? String line down, just for this to be easily consumed for modern language. Same thing goes to Chinese too. Back in the days, a single word or a single letter had multiple meanings, and if you put it into five characters into one sentence, you often get like a full sentence full of interpretations. So, it's just for the notion of trying to make it easier, essentially. I'm gay for you, take that as you. I'm looking at your maiden here, and I don't think she's having a good time looking at that comment there, Zabelli. Anyway, let's continue. Hitherto, Aubrey had had no opportunities of studying Lord Ruthven's character, and now he found that, though many more of his actions were exposed to his view, the results offered different conclusions from the apparent motives to his conduct. His companion was profuse of his liberality. The idle, the vagabond, and the beggar received from his hand more than enough to relieve their immediate wants. But Aubrey could not avoid remarking that it was not upon the virtuous reduced to indigence for the misfortunes attendants, even upon virtue that he bestowed his alms. These were sent from the door with hardly suppressed sneers. But when the keep having Profligate came to ask something, not to relieve his wants, but to allow him to wallow in his lust, or to sink him still deeper in his iniquity. Jesus. Alright. I think every culture always have one word that has a lot of meanings. Every single language has different things that has a lot of meanings. It's just about the fact that if it's string-lined down or not. That's just, yeah, that's just how it was done. Sorry. Right. Sorry, let me go back to one. But to allow him to wallow in his lust, or to sink him still deeper in his iniquity. He was sent away with rich charity. This was, however, attributed by him to the greater importunity of the vicious, which generally prevails over the retiring bashfulness of the virtuous indigent. God. You read much. Good Jesus. Alright, I'll definitely do that. And relax here, alright? We're just reading. I think maybe in that time doesn't have words for those kind of meanings. Yeah. Well, meanings changes for words. It's all about the meanings, essentially. That's just about... We're not trying to get into linguistic here. Hopefully not. There was one circumstance about the charity of his lordship, which was still more impressed upon his mind. All those upon whom it was bestowed inevitably found that there was a curse upon it, for they were all either led to the scaffold or sunk to the lowest and the most abject misery. At Brussels and other towns through which they passed, Aubrey was surprised at the apparent eagerness with which his companion sought for the center of all fashionable vice. There he entered all the spirit of the faro table. He betted and always gambled with success. Except when a known sharper was his antagonist, and then he lost even more than he gained. But it was always with the same unchanging face, with which he genuinely watched the society around. It was not, however, so when he encountered the rash youthful novice, or the luckless father of a numerous family. Then his very wish seems fortune's law. This apparent abstractedness of mind was laid aside, and his eyes sparkled with more fire than that of the cat while dallying with the half-dead mouse. In every town he left the formerly affluent youth, torn from the circle he adorned, cursing in the solitude of a dungeon the fate that had drawn him within the reach of this fiend. Whilst many of the fathers sat frantic, amidst the speaking looks of mute hungry children, without a single farthing of his late immense wealth, wherewith to buy even sufficient to satisfy their present craving. Yet he took no money from the gambling table, but immediately lost, to the ruiner of many, the last guilder that he had just snatched from the convulsive grasp of the innocent. This might but be the result of a certain degree of knowledge, which was not, however, capable of combating the cunning of more experienced. Aubrey often wished to represent this to his friend, and begged him to resign the charity and pleasure which proved the ruin of all, and did not attend to his own profit, but he delayed it, for each day he hoped his friend will give him some opportunity of speaking frankly and openly to him. Imagine someone from our time mistaking a word which mean multiple meanings, which change the context in the story. I'm pretty sure that happens already in this one, I think. It's not as like severe, but the word numerous has different meaning from back in the days and now. So will be decently awkward if you get that wrong. Hello, Daniel. I think it's the first time seeing you here. We're just at a few pages in. How's your day? Shall I continue while you have your own introduction? Hope you're having a good day. And do tell me about you while I'm reading through this. As I said, for each day he hoped his friend would give him some opportunity of speaking frankly and openly to her. However, this never occurred. Lord Ruffin is in his carriage, in the midst of various wild and rich scenes of nature, was always the same. His eyes spoke less than his lips, and though Aubrey was near the object of his curiosity, he obtained no greater gratification from it than a constant excitement from vainly wishing to break that mystery, which, to his exalted imagination, began to assume the appearance of something supernatural. Glad to know that, Daniel. Glad to know that. Hello there, Rayo. This is what you wanted, and here we are. I hope you enjoy your stay here, Rayo. We are just beginning here. We talked about the person called Aubrey acquainting with another, well, mysterious and supernatural individual. So let's continue here, shall we? They soon arrived at Rome, and Aubrey for a time lost sight of his companion. He left him in daily attendance upon the morning circle of an Italian countess, whilst he went in search of the memorials of another almost deserted city. While he was thus engaged, letters arrived from England, which he opened with eager impatience. The first was from his sister, breathing nothing but affection. The others were from his guardians. The letter astonished him. If it had before entering into the imagination that there was an evil power resident as a companion, these seemed to give him the most sufficient reasons for the belief. His guardians insist upon his immediately leaving his friend, and urged that his character was dreadfully vicious, for that the possession of irresistible powers of seduction render him licentious habits more dangerous to society. Not the first time I hear that. For that the possession of irresistible powers of seduction. Whoa. I do imagine that the chat is having a field day with lurking, so I don't want to interrupt anyone. Just chat as you would. If I find it time to punctuate and land it as I'm reading in the chat, then I will do that. But yeah, do enjoy your stays here, people, as I literally need to read this because of my classes. This makes me feel like you're next to me. Maybe I am. Well, close your eyes, or if you don't want to, continue doing your homework and having it back. I just hope that you have a wonderful day for a Saturday or Sunday. Right, do continue with this. Just sipping coffee and chilling to story time. Glad you enjoyed this. Right. Continue. It had been discovered that his contempt for adulteress had not been originated in hatred of her character, but that he had required to enhance his gratification, that his victim, the partner of his guilt, should be hurled from the pinnacle of unsullied virtue, down to the lowest abyss of infamy and degradation. In fine, that all those females who he had sought, apparently in account of their virtue, had, since his departure, thrown even the mask aside, and had not scrubbed to expose the whole deformity of their vices to the public gaze. And the stream. Yes, you have to, Rayo. So do go and stream, alright? You're doing homework or you're listening to me? Alright, good to know that. If only I can put this as a background. So, well, do as you would. Just hope that your chat isn't going off with it. Anyway, I'm just gonna continue. Aubrey determined upon leaving one, whose character had not yet shown a single bright point on which to rest the eye. He resolved to invent some plausible pretext for abandoning him altogether, proposing in the meanwhile to watch him more closely, and to let no slight circumstances pass by unnoticed. He entered into the same circle and soon perceived that his lordship was endeavoring to work upon the inexperience of the daughter of the lady whose house he chiefly frequented. In Italy, it is seldom that an unmarried female is met within society. He was therefore obliged to carry on his plan in secret. But Aubrey's eye followed him in all his windings, and soon discovered that an assignation had been appointed, which would most likely end in a ruin and an innocent, though thoughtless girl. Losing no time, he entered the apartment of Lord Ruffin, and abruptly asked him the intentions with respect to the lady, informing him at the same time that he was aware of his being about to meet her that very night. Lord Ruffin answered that his intention were such as he supposed all would have upon such an occasion, and upon being pressed whether he intended to marry her, merely laughed. Aubrey retired, and immediately writing a note to say that from that moment he must decline accompanying his lordship in the remainder of their proposed tour, he ordered his servant to seek other apartments, and calling upon the mother of the lady, informed her of all he knew, not only with regard of her daughter, but also concerning the character of his lordship. The assignment was prevented. Lord Ruffin next day merely sent his servant to notify his complete assent to a separation, but did not hint any suspicion of his plan having been foiled by Aubrey's interposition. Having left Rome, Aubrey directed his steps towards Greece, and crossing the peninsula, soon found himself at Athens. He then fixed his residence in the house of a Greek, and soon occupied himself in the tracing of the faded records of the ancient glory upon the monuments that apparently ashamed of the chronicling the deeds of free men only before slaves had hidden themselves beneath the sheltering soil of many-colored lichen. Under the same roof as himself existed as a being so beautiful and delicate that she might not form the model for a painter, wishing to portray on canvas the promised hope of the faithful in Muhammad's paradise, save that her eyes spoke too much mind for anyone to think that she could belong to those who had no souls. As she danced upon the plain or tripped along the mountainside, one would have thought the gazelles a poor type of her beauties. For who would have exchanged her eye, apparently the eye of animated nature, for that sleepily luxurious look of the animal suited but not to the taste of Epicure. The light stepped of length often accompanied Aubrey in his search after antiquities, and often will the unconscious girl engaged in pursuit of a cashmere butterfly show the whole beauty of her form, floating as if it were upon the wind, to the eager gaze of him, who forgot the letters he had just deciphered upon an almost effaced table, in the contemplation of his sylph-like figure. Often with her tresses falling, as she flitted around, exhibit in the sun rays such delicately brilliant and swiftly fading hues as might well excuse the forgetfulness of the antiquity. Antiquary. Wow, it's been a long time since I read these. Jeez. Alright, sorry about that. Alright. Who led escaped from his mind and very object he had before thought of vital importance to the proper interpretation of a passage of Bersanius. But why attempt to describe charms which all feel but none can appreciate? It was innocence, youth, and beauty, unaffected by the crowded drawing rooms and stifling balls. Wise he drew those remains of which he wished to preserve a memorial for his future hours. He would stand by and watch the magic effects of his pencil in tracing the scenes of her native place. She would then describe to him a circling dance upon the open plain, would paint to him in all the glowing colors and youthful memory the marriage pomp she remembered viewing in her infancy, and then turning to subjects that had evidently made a greater impression upon her mind, or telling all the supernatural tales of her nurse. Her earnestness and apparent belief of what she narrated excited the interest even of Aubrey, and often as she told him the tale of the living vampire who had passed years amidst his friends and dearest ties, forced every year by feeding upon the life of a lovely female to prolong his existence for the ensuing months. His blood would run cold while he attempted to laugh her out of such idle and horrible fantasy. But at length cited to him the names of old men, who at last detected one living among themselves, after several of their near relatives and children had been found marked with the stamp of the fiend's appetite. And when she found him in the incredulous, she begged of him to believe her, for it had been remarked, and those who had dared to question their existence always have some proof given, which obliged him, with grief and heartbreaking, to confess it was truth. Whoa. So, we have a live tales of vampire here. It might just be true here. Wow. Based. Yep, that is very Hello there, demigod. This one, this stream is just going to be me reading. So, I'm sorry for the lack of interactions, because, well, I am just literally here to read. So I hope you enjoy your stay. You can put me in the back and don't need to persuade yourself to talk and chat. Not at all. There's no need to chat. So do just enjoy your stay here and look around as you do other stuff. Ooh, I am seeing some old faces again. Holy hell. Hello there, Aphrodite and Elia. Glad for you two to join. At the same time too. I've been blessed by 2 gifts at the same time. Okay. So, yeah. Do enjoy your stays, Elia and Aphrodite. And the story we're reading today is on the top right, also known as The Vampire. And, yeah, we need to continue. As it was said, she detailed to him the traditional appearance of these monsters, and his horror was increased by hearing a pretty accurate description of Lord Ruffin. He, however, still persisted in persuading her that there could be no truth in her fears, though at the same time she wondered at many coincidences which had all tended to excite a belief in the supernatural power of Lord Ruffin. Also, I've been pronouncing it as Ruffin. I think it's Ruthven, but sorry for that. Ruthven. Yeah, Ruthven. I'm gonna start calling it Ruthven. Sorry about that. Pardon. Alright. Aubrey began to attach himself more and more to length. Her innocence so contrasted with all the affected virtues of the woman among whom he had sought for his vision of romance, won his heart. And while he ridiculed the idea of a young man of English habits marrying an uneducated Greek girl, still he found himself more and more attached to the almost fairy form before him. He would tear himself at times from her, and forming a plan of some antiquarian research, he would depart, determined not to return until his object was attained. But he always found it impossible. He always found it impossible to fix his attention upon the ruins around him, while in his mind he retained an image that seems alone the rightful possessor of his thoughts. Lang was unconscious of his love, but was ever the same frank, infantile being he had first known. She first seems to part from him with reluctance, but it was because she had no longer anyone with whom she could visit her favorite haunts, while her guardian was occupied in sketching or uncovering some fragment which had yet escaped the destructive hand of time. She had appealed to her parents on the subjects of vampire, and they both, with several present, affirmed their existence, pale with horror at the very name. I'm so sorry, that was from me. Pardon me, don't check your Discord, that was from me. Absolute male behavior. That is very true, but I would say this is a very innocent love. I presume it's a very innocent love. Sorry there. Just gotta make sure that I can remember doing that, and then there we go. Why is there no gay vampire anymore? Shook my head. They're not American. It's like, okay, right. Oh yeah, true that I've never seen a vampire with gut. No, right. The first thing I saw after I was done with my clothes. Okay, right. We assume to continue, okay? This is a passionate moment right now. Right. She had appealed to her parents on the subject of vampires, and they both, with several present, affirmed their existence, pale with horror at the very name. Soon after, Aubrey determined to proceed upon one of the excursions, which was to detain him for a few hours. When they heard the name of the place, they all at once begged of him not to return at night, as he must necessarily pass through a wood where no Greek would ever remained, after the day had closed upon any consideration. They described it as a resort of the vampire in their nocturnal orgies. And denounced the very heavy evils as impending upon him who dared to cross their path. Aubrey made light of their representations and tried to laugh them out of the idea, but when he saw the shudder at his daring lust to mock a superior, infernal power, the very name of which apparently made the blood freeze, he was silent. Next morning, oh, sorry, what? Oh, hello there, Navi. Fancy for you to join. We are talking about vampire and a book about vampire. So, do enjoy your stay. I only get the time to to respond to chat every once in a while. What's housing? What do you mean housing? I don't know what you're talking about here. Sorry. Yes, nocturnal orgy. There's many interpretations to a word, especially for time and for, well, geographical and time. So the word orgy isn't exactly the same interpretation as we have now as opposed to then. So I hope I hope that doesn't affect much here. Alright. Anyway. Next morning, Aubrey set off upon his excursion unattended. He was surprised to observe the melancholy face of his host, and was concerned to find that his words, mocking the belief of those horrible fiends, had inspired them with such terror. When he was about to depart, Langth came to the side of his horse, and earnestly begged him to return. Your knight allowed the power of these beings to be put in action. He promised. He was, however, so occupied in his research that he did not perceive that daylight would soon end, and that in the horizon there was one of those specks which, in warmer climates, so rapidly gathered in tremendous mass, and poured all their rage upon the devoted country. He at last, however, mounted his horse, determined to make up by speed for his delay. But it was too late. Twilight, in these southern climates, is almost unknown. Immediately the sun sets, night begins. And ere he had advanced far, the power of the storm was above, its echoing thunders at scarcely an interval of rest. Its thick, heavy rain forced its way through the canopying foliage. Wise, the blue forked lightning seems to fall and radiates at his very feet. Suddenly, his horse took fright, and he was carried with dreadful rapidity through the entangled forest. Wow, that was a mouthful. So already involved in parties, that is a de-evolution. It was a de-evolution. Bring back the old culture. Trust me, you don't want old cultures because, well, if you want to bring back old culture, then misogyny is one of them. So, let's continue here. I don't want that to come back. Right. My ears love to hear what they only want to hear. So selective hearing, I see. Well, select it as you would. Enjoy your stay. That's all I ask. The animal at last, through fatigue, stopped, and he found by the glare of lightning that he was in the neighborhood of a hovel that hardly lifted itself from the masses of dead leaves and brushwood which surrounded it. Dismounting, he approached, hoping to find someone to guide him to the town, or at least trusting to obtain shelter from the pelting of the storm. As he approached, the thunders, for a moment, silent, allowing him to hear the dreadful shrieks of a woman mingling with stifle, exultant mockery of a laugh. Continuing one almost unbroken sound, he was startled, but, roused by the thunder which again rolled over his head, he, with sudden effort, forced open the door of the hut. He found himself in utter darkness. The sound, however, guided him. He was apparently unperceived, for though he called, still the sound continued, and no notice was taken of him. He found himself in contact with someone, whom immediately ceased, when a voice cried, "Again baffled!" to which a loud laugh succeeded. And he found himself grappled by one whose strength seems superhuman. Determined to sell his life as dearly as he could, he struggled, but it was in vain. He was lifted from his feet and hurled with enormous force against the ground. His enemy threw himself upon him, and kneeling upon his breast, had him placed his hand upon his throat, when the glare of many torches, penetrating through the hole that gave light in the day, disturbed him. He instantly rose, and leaving his prey, rushed through the door, and in a moment the crashing of the branches as he broke through the wood, was no longer heard. The storm was now still, and Aubrey, incapable of moving, was soon heard by those without. They entered. The light of their torches fell upon the mud walls, and a thatch loaded every individual straw with heavy flake of soot. At the desire of Aubrey, they searched for her, who had attracted him by her cries. He was again left in the darkness, but what was his horror when the light of the torches once more burst upon him. The perceived airy form of his fair conductress brought in a lifeless corpse. He shut his eyes, hoping it was that but a vision arising from a disturbed imagination. But he again saw the same form when he unclosed him, stretched by his side. There were no color upon her cheek, not even upon her lip. Yet there was a stillness about her face that seemed almost as attaching as the life that once dwelt there. Upon her neck and breast was blood, and upon her throat were a mark of teeth having opened the vein. To this man pointed, crying, simultaneously struck with horror. "A vampire! A vampire!" A litter was quickly formed, and Aubrey was laid by the side of her who had lately been to him the object of so many bright and fairy visions, now fallen with the flower of life that had died within her. He sorry, alright. Alright. All female misogyny, my favorite pastime. Okay, right. 4, I'll have to cut that. I'll have to cut you back for a little bit. I know that's a joke, but yeah, a little bit out of the blue there. A little bit discomforting. All female know how to do is charged. Okay, right. Whew. Oh, right. I'm gonna give you a warning there for Element. I'm gonna give you a warning there. That is a joke that not much people will get, and it's a bit controversial. Okay, and the channel rules is not to be controversial, so I'll have to give you a warning for that. I know this is not good, but I might fall asleep with my headphones in my ear while listening to Nious Heiramond. Well, play out loud, I guess. Play out loud if you don't want your ears to get hurt from rolling around the places. So, yeah. Sorry for that for Element, but do I need to give you a warning for that? Not to be controversial, alright? I do get the joke though. I just can't laugh at that. Alright. Back to it. A litter was quickly formed, and Aubrey was laid by the side of her who had lately been to him the object of so many bright and fairy visions, now fallen with the flower of life that had died within her. He knew not what his thoughts were. His mind was benumbed and seems to shun reflection and take refuge in vacancy. He held almost unconsciously in his hand a naked dagger in a particular construction, which had been found in a hut. They were soon met by different parties who had been engaged in search of her whom the mother had missed. The lamentable cries as they approached the city forewarned the parents of some dreadful catastrophe. To describe their grief would be impossible. But when they ascertained the cause of the children's death, they looked at Aubrey and pointed to the corpse. They were inconsolable. Both died broken-hearted. Aubrey, being put to bed, was seized with a most violent fever and was most often delirious. In these intervals, he would call upon Lord Ruthven and upon length. By some unaccountable combination, he seemed to beg of his former companion to spare the being he loved. At other times, he would imprecate maledictions upon what does that mean anyway? Sorry, maledictions upon his head. Malediction. I actually don't know that. A magical word or phrase uttered with an intention to bring about evil. Ah, so like a curse, essentially. Don't mind this, the consequence of being silly, Billy. I think it is. You do that every time. Well, sorry for that. I've never even heard that word. Well, first time for all of us, just to say that. Okay. Continue. Alright. Do enjoy your stay. No, do enjoy your day here, Rayo. Right. Other times, he will imprecate maledictions upon his head and curse him as her destroyer. Lord Reuven chanced at its time to arrive at Athens, and from whatever motives, upon the bearing of the state Aubrey of Aubrey, immediately placed himself in the same house and became his constant attendant. When the latter recovered from his delirium, he was horrified and startled at the sight of him whose image had now combined with that of a vampire. But Lord Reuven, by his kind words, implying almost repentance for that fault that had caused their separation, and still more by the attention, anxiety, and care which he had showed, soon reconciled him to his presence. His lordship seems apathetic, being who had so astonished Aubrey. But as soon as his convalescence began to be rapid, he again gradually retired into the same state of mind. And Aubrey perceived no difference from the former man, except that at times he was surprised to meet his gaze fixed intently upon him, with a smile of malicious exultations playing upon his lips. That was a bit hot. Alright. He knew not why, but this smile haunted him. During the last stage of the invalid recovery, Lord Reuven was apparently engaged in watching the tideless waves raised by the cooling breeze, or in marking the progress of those orbs, circling like our world, the moveless sun. Indeed, he appeared to wish to avoid the eyes of all. Sorry for that comment. Just the wording here is so awesome. I like the wording here so much. What was it? Except that at times he was surprised to meet his gaze fixed intently upon him, with a smile of a malicious exultation playing upon his lips. Wow. Amen. Alright. Right, it's been an hour. Everyone, stretch. Whew, okay. Alright. Aubrey's mind, by the shock, was much weakened, and the elasticity. Is that even right? Elasticity of the spirit, which had once so distinguished him, now seems to have fled forever. He was now as much of a lover of solitude and silence as Lord Reuven. But much as he wished for solitude, his mind could not find it in the neighborhood of Athens. If he sought it amidst the ruins he had formerly frequented, Lang's form stood by his side. If he sought it in the woods, her light stepped would appear wandering amidst the underwood, in quest of the modest violet. Then suddenly turning around, would show to his wild imagination her pale face and wounded throat, with a meek smile upon her lips. He determined to fly scenes, every feature of which created such bitter association in his mind. He proposed to Lord Reuven, to which he held himself bound by the tender care he had taken of him during his illness, that they should visit those parts of Greece neither yet seen. They traveled in every direction, and sought every spot to which a recollection would be attached. But though they thus hastened, that was a little bit ink there, I didn't know what that was, hastened from place to place, yet they seemed not to heed what they gazed upon. They heard much of robbers, but they gradually began to slight these reports, which they imagined were only the invention of individuals, whose interest it was to excite the generosity of those whom they defend from pretended dangers. In consequence of thus neglecting the advice of the inhabitants, on one occasion they traveled with only a few guards, more to serve as guides than as a defense. Upon entering, however, a narrow defile at the bottom of which was the bed of a torrent, with large masses of rock brought down the neighboring precipices. Is it okay if I ask which page are you on, Nious? Oh, 52. I'm at the middle of 52, about to finish at 53. So at the end, at the middle of 52, I'm about to hit on 53. So yeah, you can find the book online if you want to. What are you majoring in anyway? English? I know that's pretty hard to imagine with how broken my English is, but I do major in English. That's why I read this. I have a class. This is British literature class. I have to read. So just give you more example. I'm currently at the line of upon entering there. Word, yes, indeed. But I did not sign up for English major for literature classes. I actually signed up for linguistic classes. But I unfortunately landed a bunch of literature classes instead of linguistic classes. So, well, I'm not complaining. I'm just feeling, well, perturbed by the fact that I can study linguistic, even though that's what I want to study here. Alright, starting from upon entering, I guess. We can continue there. The English degree is a very powerful degree. It doesn't get you a job in the short term, but it's a very enduring degree. Yes, it is. So it's a tool, as English is a tool. English major is a tool, not something that you're supposed to be taken as granted for, or taken as, well, a pride for. Because everyone can speak English. You're just better than some other people who can speak English anyway, so... yeah, let us continue, shall we? That's a bit of a sensitive topic for the people who are studying English, that's for sure. Right. Upon entering, however, a narrow defile at the bottom of which was the bed of a torrent, with large masses of rock brought down by the neighboring... My meal was pretty heavy there. I keep burping. Precipices. Okay, right, fucking hell, Jesus. Precipices. I don't know what that means, though. Precipices. Precipices. Okay, precipices. Yes, it is precipices. Okay. I'm gonna lose a meaning for that word in no time. From the neighboring precipices, they had reason to repent their negligence, for scarcely were the whole of the party engaged in a narrow pass, when they were startled by the whistling of bullets close to their heads, and by the echoed reports of several guns. In an instant, their guards had left them. 53 pages. And, placing themselves behind rocks, had begun to fire in the direction whence the report came. Lord Reuven and Aubrey, imitating their example, retired for a moment behind a sheltering turn of the defile, but ashamed of being thus detained by the foe, who, with insulting shouts, bade them advance, and being exposed to unresisting slaughter. If they of the robbers should climb above, and take them in the rear, they determined at once to rush forward in search of the enemy. Hardly that they lost the shelter of the rock, when Lord Reuven received a shot in the shoulder, which brought him to the ground. Aubrey hastened to his assistance, and, no longer heeding the contest of his own peril, was soon surprised by seeing the robber's face around him. His guards having, upon Lord Reuven's being wounded, immediately thrown up their arms and surrendered. By promises of great reward, Aubrey soon induced them to convey his wounded friend to the neighboring cabin, and having agreed upon the ransom, he was no more disturbed by their presence. They being content merely to guard the entrance till the comrade should return with the promised sum, for which he had an order. Lord Reuven's strength rapidly decreased. In 2 days of mortification ensued, and death soon advancing with hasty steps. His conduct and appearance had not changed. He seems as unconscious of pain as he had been of the objects around him. But towards the close of the last evening, his mind became apparently uneasy, and his eyes often fixed upon Aubrey, who was induced to offer his assistance, with more than usual earnestness. "Assist me. You have to save me. You may do more than that. I mean, not my life. I heed the depth of my existence as little as that of a passing day. But you may have saved my honor, your friend's honor." "How? Tell me how." "I would do anything," replied Aubrey. "I need but a little. My life's pace. I cannot explain the whole, but if you would conceal all you know of me, my honor will free from stain in the world's mouth. And if my death were unknown for some time in England, but life, it shall not be known." "Swear!" cried the dying man, raising himself with exultant violence. Let me do that again then. "Swear!" cried the dying man, raising himself with exultant violence. "Swear by all your soul, swear by all your soul's reverse, by all your nature fierce, swear that a year and a day you will not impart your knowledge of my crime or death to any living being in any way, whatever may happen or whatever you may see." His eyes seemed bursting from their socket. "I swear," said Aubrey. He sunk laughing upon his pillow and breathed no more. Oh, that was crazy. For some reason, I always think of Kratos falling off the cliff with that funny music when I hear Precipice. I mean, it's very close, I guess. Vampires are super dramatic. They would just die already. Well, not in his turn. He's a lord. He's Lord Reuven, okay? But, as we said, he sunk laughing upon his pillow and breathed no more. Aubrey retired to rest, but did not sleep. The many circumstances attending his acquaintance with this man rose upon his mind, and he knew not why. When he remembered his oath, a cold shivering came over him, as if from the presentiment of something horrible awaiting him. Rising early in the morning, he was about to enter the hovel in which he had left the corpse. But a robber met him and informed him that it was no longer there, having been conveyed by himself and comrades upon his retiring to the pinnacle of the neighboring mound. According to a promise they had given his lordship, but it should be exposed to the first cold ray of the moon that rose after his death. Aubrey, astonished, and taken several of the men, determined to go and bury it upon the spot where he laid. But When he had mounted to the summit, he found no trace of either the corpse or the clothes. Though the robbers swore they pointed out the identical rock on which they had laid the body. For a time his mind was bewildered in conjectures, but he at last returned, convinced that they had buried the corpse for the sake of the clothes. Weary of the country in which he had met with such terrible misfortune, in which all apparently conspired to heighten the superstitious melancholy that had seized upon his mind, he resolved to leave it, and soon arrived at Simyr? How do you pronounce this? S-M-Y-R. What? Wow, that's the first time seeing this. Pronunciation, yeah. I need to know about this. Sorry about interrupting this. Smudra. Smutna. Yes, Smutna. S-M-Y-R-N-A. A place in Georgia. A Greek city, essentially. I don't know how to pronounce that. Alright. And soon arrived at Smutna. While awaiting for a vessel to convey him to Otranto or to Naples, he occupied himself in arranging those effects he had with him belonging to Lord Reuven. Amongst other things was a case containing several weapons of offense, more or less adapted to ensure the death of the victim. There were several daggers and attachments. Whilst turning them over, they examined their curious forms. What was his surprise at finding a sheath, apparently ornamented in the same style as the dagger discovered in a fatal hut. He shuddered, hastening and gaining further proof. He found it a weapon, and his horror may be imagined when it is discovered that it fitted. Although peculiarly shaped, the sheath beheld in his hand. His eyes seemed to need no further certainty. They seemed gazing to be bound to the dagger. Yet still he wished to disbelieve. But the particular form, in the same varying tint upon the haft and sheath, was alike of the splendor on both, and left no room for doubt. There were also drops of blood on each. Okay. Alright, let's take a little small break here. Yes, city names do have some very weird names. Some funky names. I just read that in my head, so I don't know what it could come out as. What? Oh, right. that is a very particular one. That's not a certain voice. Hello there, area. Pardon me for some of the incorrect pronunciation, but I do hope that you enjoy your stay here. I am reading the novel in 1819, The Vampire, a pretty classic one. So yeah, hope you enjoy, and I hope you do have a nice day here. Okay. Fancy to see you here, actually. I think it's the first time seeing you join, so hello there. Of course, a official welcome is to be warranted for everyone. So hello there, area. Oh no, I'm so excited. You're so excited that you even spelled that wrong. Well, I'm glad that you're excited, but yeah. Hope you enjoy. Let us continue, shall we? Okay. He left Smutna, and on his way home at Rome, his first inquiries were concerning the lady he had attempted to snatch from Lord Reuven's seductive arts. Her parents were in distress, their fortune ruined, and she had not been heard of since the departure of his lordship. Aubrey's mind became almost broken under so many repeated horrors. He was afraid that this lady had fallen a victim to the destroyer of length. He became more morose and silent, and his only occupation consisted in urging the speed of postilions, as if he was going to save the life of someone he held dear. He arrived at Calais, a breeze which seems obedient to his will, soon wafted him to the English shores, and he hastened to the mansion of his father, and there for a moment appears to lose, in embraces of caresses of his sisters, all memories of the past. If she before, by her infantine caresses, had gained his affection, now that the woman began to appear, she was still more attaching as a companion. Yes, I do to see you more here, area. Because of my current dilemmas of my college classes, these reading streams gotta be a lot more frequent than what it's supposed to be. So, yeah, I hope to see you a lot more in the near future. Anyhow, continue. I thought it was pronounced Smyrna. Smyrna? Smyrna. Smyrna.
Smyrna.
Yeah, that's just Greek. I don't I don't know how to pronounce that correctly. Sorry there. I don't know Greek. Oh, good. I guess that's a promise. Right. Let's continue. Miss Aubrey had not that winning grace which gains the gaze and applause of the drawing-room assemblies. There was none of that light brilliancy which only exists in a heated atmosphere of a crowded apartment. Her blue eye was never lit up by the levity of the mind beneath. There was a melancholy charm about it which did not seem to arise from misfortune, but from some feel within that appeared to indicate a soul conscious of a brighter realm. Her step was not that light footing which strays wherever a butterfly or a color may attract, but a sedate and pensive. When alone, her face was never brightened by a smile of joy. But when her brother breathed to her his affection, and would in her presence forget those griefs she knew destroyed his rest, she would have exchanged a smile for that of a voluptuary, yes. It seems as if those eyes, that face were then playing in the light of their own native sphere. She was yet only 18, but had not been presented to the world, it having thought by her guardians more fit that her interpretation should be delayed until her brother's return from the continent, when he might be her protector. It was now, therefore, resolved that the next drawing-room, which was fast approaching, should be the epoch of her entry into the busy scene. Aubrey would rather have remained in the mansion of his father, and fed upon the melancholy which empowered him. He could not feel interest about his Jesus, there's so many very hard words. I also have to search this up. I have not seen this word anywhere before. Frivolity. Sorry there. I have not seen this word anywhere. Oh, wait. I've seen this word before, but it's been a long time. Sorry about that. Frivolities. Alright. He could not feel interest about the frivolities of the fashionable strangers. When his mind had been so torn by the events he had witnessed, but he determined to sacrifice his own comfort to the protection of his sister. They soon arrived in the town and prepared for the next day, which has been announced as a drawing room. Frivolity, yes, indeed. It's been a long time since I used that word. Very, very long time. Or it's been never, if this were to be the case at this point, so. Well, pardon him about that. Okay. The crowd was excessive. The drawing room had not been held for a long time, and all who were anxious to bask in a smile of royalty hastened thither. Aubrey was there with his sister, while he was standing in a corner by himself, heedless of all around him, engaged in a remembrance that the first time he had seen Lord Reuven was in that very place. He found himself suddenly seized by the arm, and a voice he recognized too well sounded in his ear. Remember your oath. He had hardly courage to turn, fearful of seeing a spectre that would blast him, when he perceived, at a little distance, the same figure which had attracted his notice on the spot upon his first entry into society. He gazed till his limbs almost refusing to bear the weight. He was obliged to take the arm of a friend, and forcing a passage through the crowd, he threw himself into the carriage and was driven home. He paced the room with hurried steps and fixed his hand upon his head, as if he was afraid his thought was bursting from his brain. Lord Reuven again before him. Circumstances started in dreadful array. Dagger, his oath. He roused himself. He could not believe it possible. The dead rised again. He thought his imagination has conjured up the image his mind was resting upon. It was impossible that it could be real. He determined, therefore, to go again into society. For though he attempted to ask concerning Lord Reuven, the name hung upon his lips, and could not succeed in gaining information. He went a few nights after his sister to the assembly of a near relation, leaving her under the protection of a matron. He retired into a recess, and there gave himself up to his own devouring thoughts, perceiving at last that many were leaving. He aroused himself and entered another room, found his sister surrounded by several apparently in earnest conversation. He attempted to pass and get near her, when one, whom he requested to move, turned around and revealed to him those features he had most abhorred. He sprang forward, seized his sister's arm, and with hurried steps forced her towards the street. At the door, he forced himself to impeded by the crowd of servants who were waiting for their lords. And while he was engaged in passing them, he again heard the voice whisper close to him, "Remember your oath." He did not dare to turn, but hurrying his sister, soon reached home. Aubrey became almost distracted. If before his mind had been absorbed his own subject, how much more completely was engrossed. Now that the certainty of the monsters living again pressed upon his thoughts, his sister's attention was not unheeded. And it was in vain that she cheated him to explain to her that what has caused her abrupt conduct. He only uttered a few words, and those terrified her. The more he thought, the more he was bewildered. His oath startled him, and was then to allow this monster to roam, bearing ruin upon his breath, amidst all he held dear, and not avert his progress. His very sister might have been touched by him. But even if he were to break his oath and disclose his suspicions, he would not believe him. Who will believe him? He thought of employing his own hand to free the world from such a wretch. But death, he remembered, had been already mocked. For days he remained in a state, shut up in his own room. He saw no one, and ate only when his sister came, who, with eyes streaming with tears, besought him, for her sake, to support nature. At last, no longer capable of bearing stillness and solitude, he left his house, roamed from the street to street, anxious to fly that image which haunted him. His dress became neglected, and he wandered, as often exposed. I just realized the music hasn't been on this entire time. As opposed exposed to the noonday sun as to the midnight damps. He was no longer to be recognized. At first he returned with evening to the house, but at last he laid him down to rest wherever fatigue overtook him. Hello there, Avatar. Yes, indeed. I'm just reading right now. Hope you have a good day there, Avatar. Now, do mind me as I continue. His sister, anxious for his safety, employed people to follow him, but they were soon distanced by him, who fled from the pursuers swifter than any, from thought. That's a good sentence. Wow. But they were soon distanced by him who fled from a pursuer swifter than any, one from thought. I like that. His conduct, however, suddenly changed. Struck with the idea that he left, by his absence, the whole of his friends, with a fiend amongst them. Of those present, they were unconscious. He determined to enter again into society and watch them closely, anxious to forewarn, in spite of his oath, all whom Lord Reuven approached with intimacy. But when he entered into the room, his haggard and suspicious look was so striking, his inward shuttings so visible, that sister was at last obliged to beg of him to abstain from seeking, for her sake, a society which affected him so strongly. When, however, remonstrance proved unavailing, the guardians thought proper to interpose, and, fearing his mind was almost alienated, they thought it high time to resume again that trust which had been before imposed upon them by Aubrey's parents. Desirous of saving him from the injuries and sufferings he had daily encountered in his wanderings, and of preventing him from exposing to the general eye those marks of what they consider folly. I just lose everything there. Okay. They engaged of a physician to reside in a house and take constant care of him. He hardly appeared to notice it, so completely was his mind absorbed by one terrible subject. His innocence became at last so great that he was confined to his chamber. There he would often lie for days, incapable of being roused. He had become emaciated. His eyes had attained a glassy luster. The only sign of affection and recollection remained displayed itself upon the entry of his sister. Then he would sometimes start, and seizing her hands with looks that severely afflicted her, he would desire her not to touch him. Oh, do not touch him. If your love for me is aught to not go near him. When, however, she inquired to whom he referred, his only answer was, "True, true," and again he sank into a sad state, whence not even he could rouse him. This lasted many months. Gradually, however, as the year was passing, his incoherence became less frequent, and his mind threw off a portion of its gloom, whilst his guardians observed that several times in a day he could not count upon his finger a definite number, and then smiled. The time had nearly elapsed when, upon the last day of the year, one of his guardians entered his room, began to converse with his physicians upon the melancholic circumstances of Aubrey's being in so awful a situation. When his sister was going next day to be married, instantly Aubrey's attention was attracted. He asked anxiously to whom, glad of his mark of returning intellect, of which they feared he had been deprived. They mentioned the name of the Earl of Marston. Thinking this was a young earl whom he had met within the society, Aubrey seemed pleased, and astonished them still more by his expressing his intention to be present at the nuptials, and desiring to see his sister. They answered not, but in a few minutes his sister was with him. He was apparently again capable of being affected by the influence of her lovely smile, for he pressed her to his breast and kissed her cheek, wet with tears, flowing at the thoughts of her brother's being once more alive to the feeling of affection. Hello there, Pakiasha. Welcome back, and take your time. He began to speak with all his wonted warmth, and to congratulate her upon her marriage with a person so distinguished for rank and every accomplishment. When he suddenly perceived a locket upon her breast, opening it, what was his surprise at beholding the features of the monsters who had so long influenced his life. He seized the portrait in a paroxysm of rage and trampled it underfoot. Upon her asking him why he thus destroyed the resemblance of her future husband, he looked as if he did not understand her. Then seizing her hands and gazing on her with a frantic expression of countenance, he bade her swear that she would never wed this monster, but he could not advance. It seems as if that voice again bade him remember his oath. He turned suddenly round, thinking Lord Reuven was near him, but saw no one. In the meantime, the guardians and the physician, who had heard the whole and thought this was but a return of his disorder, entered, and forcing him from Miss Aubrey, desired her to leave him. He fell upon his knees, and to them he implored. He begged of them to delay but for one day. They, attributing this to the insanity they imagined had taken possession of his mind, endeavored to pacify him and retired. Yeah. I'm gonna fall asleep at this rate. What is that? Hulk Cork? Homework? Is that it? Nothing so calm and relaxing, Devin. This is the intention of this, okay? Sorry for that. Portrait. Yeah, I say so what? Okay. Alright. Yes, I said portrait. Portrait. What about it? Lord Reuven had called the morning after the drawing room, and had been refused with everyone else. When he heard of Aubrey's ill health, he readily understood himself to be the cause of it. But when he learned that he was deemed insane, his exultation and pleasure could hardly be concealed from those among whom he had gained this information. He hastened to the house of his former companion, and by constant attendance and the pretense of great affection for the brother and the interest in his fate, he gradually won the ear of Miss Aubrey. Who could resist his power? His tongue had dangers and toils to recount, could speak of himself as of an individual having no sympathy with any being on a crowded earth, save with her to whom he addressed himself. Could tell how, since he knew her, his existence had begun to seem worthy of preservation. If it were merely that he might listen to his soothing accents. In fine, he knew so well how to use the serpent's art, or such was the will of fate, that he gained her affections. The title of the elder branch falling at length to them, he obtained an important embassy, which served as an excuse for hastening the marriage. In spite of her brothers, this is... What was it? I forgot about... Parenthesis, there you go. Parenthesis. In spite of her brother's deranged state, which was to take place the very day before his departure for the continent. His tongue had dangers. Depends how you interpret it. It could be the work of manipulation, or the thing that you're being expecting there, Alaya. Anyhow, when I hear marriage, I think of, well, something else in turn. There's a difference here, alright? There's a difference here. But, we'll conclude most of the details here. But, do allow me to continue. Aubrey, when he was left by the physician and his guardians, attempted to bribe the servants, but in vain. He asked for pen and paper. It was given to him. He wrote a letter to his sister, conjuring her, as she valued her own happiness, her own honor, and the honor of those in the grave, who once held in their arms as their hope, and the hope of their house, to delay but for a few hours that marriage, on which he denounced the most heavy curses. The servants promised they would deliver it, but giving it to the physician, he thought it better not to harass any more the mind of Miss Aubrey by what he considered the raving of a maniac. Night passed on without the rest of the busy inmates of the house, and Aubrey heard, with a horror that may more easily be conceived than described, the notes of busy preparation. Morning came, and the sound of the carriage broke upon his ears. Aubrey grew almost frantic. The curiosity of the servant at last overcame their vigilance. They gradually stole away, leaving him in the custody of a helpless old woman. He seized the opportunity with one bound, was out of the room, and in a moment found himself in the apartment where all were nearly assembled. Lord Reuven was the first to perceive him. He immediately approached, and, taking his arm by force, hurried him from the room, speechless with rage. When on the staircase, Lord Reuven whispered in his ears, "Remember your oath, and know, if not my pride today, your sister is the dishonored. Women are frail." So saying, he pushed him towards his attendants, who, roused by the old woman, had gone in search of him. Aubrey could no longer support himself. His rage, not finding vent, had broken a blood vessel, and he was conveyed to bed. This was not mentioned to his sister, who was not present when he entered, as the physician was afraid of agitating her. The marriage was solemnized, and the bridegroom left London. Aubrey's weakness increased. The effusion of blood produced symptoms of the near approach of death. He desired sister guardians might not be called, but when the midnight hour had struck, he had related imposingly what the reader has perused. He died immediately after. The guardian hastened to protect Miss Aubrey, but when they arrived, it was all too late. Lord Reuven had disappeared, and Aubrey's sister had gutted the thirst of a vampire. That marks the end of Vampyre. Alright. So, I presume that by the... I guess at the end, Aubrey did broke the oath. So, that was the consequence. Well, hold on. He desired sister guardian might not be called, but when the midnight hours had struck, he rated... What does that mean? What is that word? I don't know what that means. Oh, it's compasly. Oh, that makes so much sense now, because that word looks like an E, but it's not an E. He related compasly what the reader had perused, and he died immediately after. But is it really the fault of Aubrey? I feel like Aubrey... Alright. Throughout this entire end part of the story, I feel so bad for Aubrey here. Because he's merely keeping to an oath that he didn't know what to do with it afterwards. But poor Aubrey and Aubrey's sister. We don't even know her name. But yeah, that was the Vampyre. Do you guys enjoy this? Is it understandable? The beginning is a bit hard to understand, that's for sure. Like I had a bit of trouble understanding the first part too. But yeah, this was a pretty good story, not gonna lie. This is a pretty good one. No, super interesting. It is. You're clearly enjoying this. Which part of it? The content or the voice? I think you interpreted well enough. Well, let's just say this. Give us a second. We will we'll go to intermission screen for a while. I'll go to recompose myself a little bit. I want to go drink some water and then get something to we'll take a small break here, like a 2 to 3 breaks, and 2 to 3 minute breaks. All right. So the story is good. I guess I am happy to help. Right, I'll be back. Yep, I'll be back. I'll come back in no time, okay? Just give me a second, and do go and then stand up for a bit and stretch if you haven't. All right, I'll be back. Alright, I am back. How's everyone doing? So, what are we talking about in the chat here? First actual VTubers stream I'm enjoying. Well, this kind of content doesn't really falls into the conventional content of, you know, the normal content of VTubers. So, I just find this opportunity to read this, I presume, I guess, because I really need to read this, but I don't have the time for it. Yeah, I guess why not just like combine the two together if I wanted to work and do that at the same time. Oh, there, Hitsuki. That was fast. Immediately react to it. You love reading, but damn, is it hard to read sometimes? Well, give me suggestions. In my descriptions, there is tags that you can use, and one of the tags is called ideas. If you want me to read something, or give me a book that you want me to read, then, well, use that tag and tag me on Twitter. Give me a book or something that that you want me to read or anything like that. If you want suggestions, go ahead. I'm always up for suggestions if you want me to read more. But yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed that area. Crime and Punishment. Huh. That's a peculiar book. Crime and Punishment. Interesting. Oh, we'll get to that. But yeah. To talk about the plot of the Vampire. It's a very conventional one, but I feel like the wording of it makes a lot better. Because like you cannot not feel bad for Aubrey. At least from my interpretations. So I don't know about you guys, but this is my interpretation of the story here, is that Aubrey met this person called Lord Reuven. Is Lord Reuven person, and he is a so-called nobleman or a lord per se, and he met it but was given some warnings from his guardians and his friends about him being a possible candidate for a vampire, but he didn't really think about that much until he moved to Athens, where he meets a girl named what was it, I can't remember the name. Lathan, yeah, Lathan. And she was the most innocent girl yet, and Aubrey fell in love with her, and couldn't. Although he needs to depart back to UK, he finds it hard to leave the girl alone in Greek. But what happens is, this girl got her throat slit by an unknown individual, and it's also at that time, it was Ianth. It's Ianth. Sorry, it's Ianth. Yeah, it's Ianth. God, that's embarrassing. So yeah, Ianth was sadly murdered by someone that was unknown. Got her throat slit. But it was also at the same time when Lord Reuven came to Greek to visit Aubrey. And as soon as the two people collide together again, they were attacked by bandits, which we know about that, and Lord Reuven was wounded, like was shot in the chest or something. I think he was, yeah. He was shot in the body and was slowly dying in the hut, while for some reason the bandits were subdued and ran away immediately. Which I think is indication that, well, at that point we already know that Lord Reuven is already a vampire. So it's not hard to put the two pieces together at that point. And then when Lord Reuven was being wounded, Aubrey and him was being trapped, took refuge in a cabin, while the bandits are going out for supplies to give it to him. But what they didn't, while they were waiting for the bandits to come back, Lord Reuven was at the brink of death. Also, we think he is. So at Lord Reuven's death, he mentions an oath that whatever happens today can never be known by other people. So that's exactly what's been haunted Aubrey ever since he came back to England. And then, well, the rest is history. He becomes a lot more hysterical. He started to become paranoid about the existence of, well, Lord Ruthven. Gee, that's a mouthful. Yeah. So, and he was being constantly reminded by the quote, "Remember your oath." So it's constantly this happening throughout his time back in UK, and he slowly but surely went insane and got locked in a dungeon of some sort. But it was also at that time when Aubrey's family, well, his sister, was engaged. And although we don't know who the husband was during the first half of the second half of the story, we soon can realize that it is exactly Lord Ruthven. So, but here's the thing though. Aubrey cannot tell his sister that it is someone, well, it is Lord Ruthven. So he's just eating himself on the inside out about the story. And that is the dissonance at the end of the story here. That's so good. I love it so much. That one line, I don't know where to get that again, but yeah, I still remember that one line. They cannot chase something that's as swiftly as their thoughts. So it's impossible to be able to let out the absolute pressure that Aubrey was experiencing by then. So holy hell, that line was so good. Now this particular writing form is very much a bridge between really old English and modern English. By the end, it's fairly modern English by that point, but the older English is still here for the first few sentences, especially for the amount of punctuation, the amount of comma there are in the writing here. That's especially obvious. So it has to be translated, right? I think no. This is a print, like back in it. Is there an original piece? I don't think there is. I'm not sure if there's a different version of it, but from the one that I'm reading right now is like a tiny adaptation of it. So it's still printed with the old print. That's why I have some troubles reading it at times, because very hard to do. But yeah, this one's translated already. And if it's really, let me give you a example of what is not translated, okay? This is the Old English from Shakespeare, and this is the most iconic one of the most iconic sonnet by Shakespeare. This will be the example of it. This is a sonnet called, I don't remember particularly which one is this, but Jesus, I should remember this, but oh god. This is a sonnet by Shakespeare. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease have all too short a date. Sometimes too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is its gold complexium dimmed, and every fair from fair sometimes declines, by chance of nature's changing course untrimmed. And by thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou oust, nor shall death bring thou wondrous in a shade, when in eternal lines the time thou growst, so long as men can breathe and eyes can see, so long as I live this, and this gives life to thee. So that was the version of Old English, essentially. I have a humor of an 8-year-old. This is actually really good sonnet, not gonna lie. You did your best in reading it. Good job. Well, I did my best. I tried my best. All right. I'm still improving. It's still a lot of words that I've seen before, but God, these words are really old, and you don't use it anymore. It's very hard to get some of these out. But yeah, from the grammar of Old English is like this. So for example, let's see. And summer's lease have all too short a date. It's a date summer leaves have all too short. It's I'm flipping between the two. So Old English is a lot worse than, it's not worse, but a lot harder to read than the Vampyre. To improve from it, yeah, I guess. It wouldn't really improve if we were to continue reading Old English, because Old English vocabularies are very wide and very sophisticated. It's extremely streamlined down to the point where it's not as hard to read as it is with Old English like Shakespeare ones, when you can actually read it correctly. Like for example, one of my other book that I wanted to read, but I don't think I'm gonna read it today since I don't want to break my voice, is The Graveyard Book by Nious Heiramond. You know, I talked about this before, and if I were to read that, it would be, there was a hand in the darkness, and it held a knife. The knife had a handle of polished black bone, and a blade finer and sharper than any razor. If it sliced you, you might not even know you had been cut. Not immediately. The knife had done almost everything it was brought to that house to do, and both the blade and the handle were wet. Like, this is easy, because this is just actual English. This is modern English, so I wouldn't say this is hard. But yeah, older English are considerably harder for me, even though I come from an English major background, and it's my 3rd year at this point. Well, more than that, to be precise, but still. But still. Literature is my passion, in some degrees, because I don't have time to read them. So it is my very rare passion. So next time I think I'll be reading The Graveyard Book, or no, I'm gonna preserve my voice a little bit. Like, reading 2 hours on end is a little bit too hurtful to your voice. So yeah, I think this is a good time for us to call it today. But before we end today's stream, I would like to share with you guys a poem from the poem book the poem textbook that I have right now, which I really like. It is a modern poem called Waiting the Dog. The poem goes like this. It is awkward for me and bewildering for him, as I hold him in my arms in a small bathroom, balancing our weight on a shaky blue scale. But this is the way to wait a dog, and easier than training him to sit obediently on one spot, with his tongue out, waiting for the cookie. With pencil and paper, I subtract my weight from our total to find out the remainder that is his, and I start to wonder if there's an analogy here. It could not have to do with my leaving you, though I never figured out what you amounted to, until I subtracted myself on a combination. You held me in my arms more than I held you, through all those awkward and bewildering months, and now we are both lost in a strange and distant neighborhood. That is Waiting the Dog. A real one. I really like this one because it perfectly encapsulated the loss of love after a relationship. Because you never know that you lost it until you did lose it. We always take things as granted as people. So this particular line here. It could not have to do with my leaving you, though I can never figure it out what you amounted to, until I subtracted myself from our combination. That was a really good poem. I really like this. A really easy one to memorize too. So, yeah, here's my poem of the week, I guess. For all of you to share with your friends and folks. Yeah, I'm gonna preserve my voice in case I lose more since I have tutor class line up after this. So, thank you so much for staying here for this long to read through a story that barely anyone knows how to read through, including me. So, yeah. Expect this to come a lot more as the weeks moves forward, since there's a lot more things I have to read for my classes. This is just one of the classes I have to read, and after I get my textbook, there's way more stuff I have to read. And aside from that particular class, I also have a Old English class that's studying Old English ones, which are translated to, but I do need to read those as well. So a lot more to come. Today is just a taste for how much we're going to be reading if we were to read like this. So yeah, I hope that you guys all of my heirs enjoy this, and I'm definitely not starting to become nervous and realize what I just did online here. As I finish this, that's why I'm starting to like stutter and start to mumble over my words. But yeah, thank you so much for staying here with me to study and read some books that I'll never be able to read myself too. So yeah, the schedule for next week is going to come very soon, I guess. I'll work on it once I have the time for it, but for now, that's it for today. Thank you so much once again, and I'll see you very, very soon. Till next time.